So thank you so much for joining us. Each week we introduce our home viewers to different crafts, hobbies, and activities that citizens in our community participate in. And I think I'm filming right now, although the numbers are not moving on the clock. So I hope people in the control room are seeing that in case we have to restart. The clock is not, thank you very much. Hi. Anyway, so again, my name's Diane Miller, and I am welcoming a new person to our show that's never been on before. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Michael Rohde. I'm with the Holy Mega Makerspace, and I have a number of things that I do, and we have members who do all kinds of things.
Okay, and so we usually start by looking into the camera, camera one, Charles' camera, and giving a shout out to somebody out there in our viewership. Is there somebody you'd like to say hello to?
Hello, Gordon, my dog.
We'll have to talk later about him. And I'm going to give a shout out to the students at South Bay Elementary who love science and engineering and investigating, which is what this show is going to be about tonight, I think. So we have an interesting topic, one I had never heard of until I met Michael, and it's called rail biking. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So before we go to rail biking, I want to back up a little bit and talk about something you already mentioned, and that is the Olympia Makerspace. Did I say that right?
It's Holy Mega.
Holy Mega Makerspace.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's correct.
And it's a nonprofit. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you're located where?
We are located in downtown Olympia, basically on the block of Adams and 4th Avenue.
Okay, and what kind of things might a person see there?
Well, I think one of our greatest strengths and our greatest weaknesses is the fact that we do just about anything. We're open to the community on Thursday evenings at our open houses. And basically, if you come in there and you know how to do something, it's very possibly something that nobody else or some other people there don't know anything about. So our mission and our goal is to share what we know, learn from others, and then take that knowledge and make something.
Okay. And that sounds interesting. I'm going to have to get down there on Thursdays. And what time did you say that is?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock until what time?
Till the last key holder leaves.
Okay. And so are there tools there? Or?
We do have some tools,
okay.
And the major tools you would have to be certified on, which we can do. We have 3D printers. We have.
Does it cost me to use the 3D printer?
We may ask you to pay for some of the 3D printing filament if you're using tons of it. So there's actually a little counter on what we use that will tell you, what the material costs are, and usually it's pennies.
So it's not a big profit organization.
We're a nonprofit organization,
You're a nonprofit.
And we do mostly educational kinds of things.
And when we opened, there was a slide there of what rail biking. Is that what you're sort of an expert in? Can I say?
That's
one.
I have been described as that. Yes.
Okay.
The picture that you saw was of a trip that I did to Madagascar. I had a couple of contracts with USAID there. Okay. And the picture came from our first setup there at a station next to the actually, it was next to a soccer stadium where they were having a soccer game, but people were very interested in what we were doing, so they started showing up in large crowds, and we had set the rail bikes up and were having them move up and down the tracks a little bit, and a lot of the men who were there started to laugh about it. So what I did was I found the smallest woman in the crowd and put her on the rail bike, and she put 3 children on the outrigger, and then we put a bag of rocks on it, and she was whipping these kids and rocks up and down the rails, and all this laughing stopped.
Huh. I wonder if we can bring that picture back up that Michael's talking about. It wasn't that one. It was the opening credits shot. Yes, this. So this is a picture in Madagascar. Is that right?
That's correct.
And how many times have you gone there?
I did 2 contracts down there.
2 contracts. And is this for entertainment in Madagascar, or is this actual form of transportation?
Well, in working with USAID, their interest was on this particular line, which is up in the central part of the country near Fianarantsoa. They had there was about 100 miles of track that ran from the highlands down to the Indian Ocean at the port of Manakar. And the problem was that there had been some really big cyclones that had come through and
ripped up part of the track.
Well, they counted somewhere, I think it was about 360 different landslides that occurred, all the way from huge multi-ton things to, a place that you might be able to clear with some people and a shovel. So
that could be a problem. So can we back up a little in the conversation too? Because we're talking about these tracks. These tracks were not designed for your bikes. Your bikes are designed for the tracks, and the tracks we're talking about are actually a railroad.
Yeah, it's
so this 100 mile spans. Is it active? Would trains still be using the track?
In fact, all the time I spent in Madagascar, I never saw an active rail vehicle except for a crew that I went out with in one of their speeders.
Yeah.
And other than that, they had lots of steam trains and this, that, and the other thing lying around. And nothing was working. There's also, they had some rail buses that were made by the Michelin Corporation back in the 1930s. And the only ones that still exist in the world are all in Madagascar. And
really?
They're very interesting. USAID hired them for my group one weekend. And we went out on some rail where people hadn't been for 20 years probably.
20 years, wow, abandoned. So you were saying before the show started that, I thought it would be good to take these bikes on abandoned rails rather than active ones, but you said abandoned means sometimes they haven't been kept up, there's landslides, and you were talking about how sometimes even the metal is missing from...
Well, right. I mean, abandonment is a complicated term. In the U.S., abandonment is a legal term that has to do with the right-of-way owner having to apply to the National Surface Transportation Board for abandonment, which means that they are not required to provide service to anybody that's on that line. Anywhere else, I mean, most people, when they hear the term abandonment, assume that it's a piece of track that isn't being used.
Right. Not one that's not kept up.
It's more complicated than that.
So, in Madagascar, though, the line you were on, that line that the picture was of, it was abandoned.
It was inactive.
It was inactive. But you bring your bikes there. So tell us about these bikes. Do they ride on both rails?
They do. I've built about 125 of these.
Oh, you actually build them yourself?
And design them.
Do a lot of people build these?
People have. It's a pretty niche sort of activity and market, but the people that do it it's a small number of people nationwide here, but there are people who do it internationally. And so it depends. I mean, there's issues of the railroads in general really hate rail bike.
They don't like rail bikes
because people go out and ride without getting authorization to be on the rail, and it's a huge liability issue for the railroads. When I decided to do commercial stuff with it 25 years ago, all the rail bikers I knew said, "You'll never get any railroad to ever agree to let you use their rails," but it took me about 10 minutes of not acting like a cowboy, so that helped, and
So you say that before you go on the rails, you contact the owners of the rails?
Absolutely.
So all rails are owned by somebody, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
even abandoned rails.
And you have made like 130 of these, and are they all around the world? Are they international? Do you just have yours?
I do have them in various places. I have some in Portugal. I have some in Costa Rica. I have some in Australia. I have. I mean, they're all over the place.
And are they hard to operate?
No.
I mean, how do I just pedal it like a regular bike?
You just pedal it. There's no balancing. There's no steering. You just pedal and brake.
Okay, I wish we had one here. Or is there a picture of just
a rail bike? Yes. Let me.
Or do you want to show? Do you want to go to this?
Let me show the
but
video.
Can we stop possibly at some of the slides?
Oh, absolutely.
So that we just don't put on automatic pilot.
This is a video, so
yes, right.
But yes, when we get to the slides, I'll stop.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay. So this is completely in Spanish, and because it was done by media people down there, there's a lot of inaccurate information, so I'm just going to keep
So this shows us the rail bike up close.
Right. This is setting up for one of the tours that I was doing.
But it rides on both rails simultaneously? It's not primarily, it looks like the person's balanced over one rail.
No, there's an outrigger, and you'll see that in a second, where it goes over to a roller on the opposing rail.
Okay.
And that's what keeps you upright. I mean,
and how fast do these go? Are faster than a regular bike?
They can if you go on a tour, or I'm taking out somebody who has never done it before. I like to find out how what the rail is like and keep the speeds down, because I shift my weight in ways that I'm unconscious of now, and so I've found that even when I build a bike,
oh boy, I'd be nervous going on
a new rail bike design, it's better for me to show it or have somebody ride who's never ridden a rail bike, because I can watch and see by their reactions what may be going on with it. If I get on it, I'm just going to shift my weight and I'll fly along, and I'll say, well, there's nothing wrong with this bike.
Right. And so, now wait, what are they eating? So this is like a tour they're going on?
Yeah, this was a tour that we had set up
in Mexico
or
Portugal?
This is Costa Rica.
Oh, this one's Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Okay, so you make these bikes, you sell them to companies that give tours?
I have, yes.
Okay. But is it possible for people in this area to?
There's actually an operation of rail bikes out in near Shelton at Vance Creek called I think it's called Vance Creek Rail Riders.
Okay. And
they have an operation there, and that's open. It's seasonal, so they'll be open again, I think, in May, if I'm remembering correctly.
But people can buy these and own them themselves and just go out rail biking?
Theoretically, I was always careful about just selling them to anybody, because people take them out and use them.
So it's better. And then how do you start? Do you start with a bike, or do you start from scratch?
I actually am not a bicycle specialist. I specialized in the attachment. And I have built rail bikes from scratch. But generally, I do what I call a retrofit, which is where you take a bicycle and you build a frame for it, and you attach that, and that way all the gearing and all of the pedaling and power stuff is already there. You don't have to build that part of it.
I had never even heard of this. Can you tell us the history of rail biking?
Sure.
Is there a history to it?
Oh, yeah, and it's been around for a long time. Most people, including myself, when they first hear about it, think that they've come across something that nobody has ever thought of ever in the world. New. And I started doing a little bit of research, and I've found patents from 1869 of pedal-powered rail vehicles. And so it's been around forever. And when they first came out, they were used by telegraph companies and by railroads, because they needed to check the telegraph lines, and they all ran along the railway tracks. And when you have a train full of people, you can't stop every 10 feet and check the line. So they found that rail bikes were the most efficient way.
Have you ever seen any of those that were built in the 1800s?
Oh, oh, yeah. And
You've seen the blueprints, you said.
Well, I've seen pictures. I've seen them in museums.
Yeah.
And
how fun.
Yeah, and I have lots of patents. I think I have found something like 65 patents of rail bikes or pedal-powered rail vehicles, or lots of times they call them velocipedes, but it just depends on.
But back then it was used more for work rather than transportation or recreation.
I mean, there are stories of a fellow in Michigan who built himself a rail bike and took it to work, and I forget how many miles he was going to work on the rail, but he was going to work one day and found a broken rail. And was able to flag down a train that was coming to keep them from going off the rails.
Wow.
And at first, of course, the railroad company wanted to charge him with trespassing and all this kind of stuff.
Boy.
But you know, they realized that, you know, maybe this wasn't such a bad thing. So he actually, his name, I think, was Teeter, and there is a patent that he's done, but he also bought that first rail bike patent that I saw, which was kind of unusual, particularly at that time. Even today, it's unless you're Disney, you don't get copyrights.
Actually, after hearing that story, I'm thinking that all railways
should have
them.
Yeah.
And hire people to go out on the lines to find out what kind of shape.
Well, one of the things that I talk to right-of-way owners about when I'm discussing, you know, trying to get access to their rails, is the fact that we can be out there and we can find problems really early before they start throwing trains off the rails.
Yeah, I know about that.
And the very first rail bike trip I ever put together was down in Tillamook, and I called them, and it was
Oregon?
Yes, and it was owned by the Port of Tillamook, and they were really nice. They said, "Oh, you've built a rail bike. Do you want to come down and use it?" And I was like, okay, I can do that.
That's good.
And so we went out, and they said, okay, well, Gary Beachy is going to be out in his high rail truck today, so he knows you're out there. We're telling you so that you can, you know, make sure you guys don't run into each other. So anyway, we were going out, and my wife and I were we were trying to go clear up the coast, but every time we get to a town, there were, you know, the first town, there were like 3 people that saw us, and then every time we got to, you know, there were just more and more people, and I couldn't figure it out until I realized that people were calling their friends in the next
go
town.
outside and look at this.
But we, anyway, we were going along, and we went past this little lake, and we slowed down a lot, and it was a double rail bike with a bike, 2 bikes next to each other with a platform. And we went past it, and I felt this little dip. I was like, what was that? So we backed the bike up, and we did it again. There's a little dip, so I got off the bike, and I went over, and I was stepping on the rail ends, and I found a loose rail end, but it was only moving maybe a 32nd of an inch, but I could feel it on the bike. So when we got back, we ran into Gary Beachy, and I said, you've got a loose rail end by the rotting stump by a mile marker or whatever. And he said, well, I just came through there in my, his 6-ton high rail truck, and I didn't feel anything. And I said, well, get out and walk on this rail end, and you'll see what I mean. So when I called in on Monday to thank them for letting me do that, they said, oh yeah, and Gary went out there and found that loose rail end. So,
so do you have any more pictures you can show us?
Sure.
So that, any more slideshows or pictures?
Yeah, let me
And especially of uses of these rail bikes. So you said that they're used historically for telegraphs. And so this would be actual, what I'm looking at here. Okay, let me wait.
Okay, well, let me see. This is all actually my stuff for the most part. There's another one in Madagascar, and let me get out of this and find another.
So they are used now pretty much for recreational purposes, right?
It's being done 25 years ago when I started doing this. As far as I know, I was the only person in the U.S.
The only person in the United States doing this?
Doing that at that time.
But now there's more?
Yeah, there are places that do rail bike tours now.
But it is more recreational? It's not something I might use to go buy my groceries?
I have sold rail bikes to Kansas City Power and Light because they had about 20 miles of track that they ran their coal on, and they had to go out and they had to inspect that stuff, and it took them forever to do it because they would people would walk it, because if you get on a vehicle, you don't notice the really subtle things that are going wrong. So they bought a rail bike from me, and that's what they use to maintain their line.
So, and that was Kansas City, you said? Where did you say? So you sell these all over the world, internationally, and all over the United States?
Yeah, I have, yeah. I've sold
So
them.
there's not that many people that make these rail bikes?
There are not. Most people that I knew when I was getting into rail biking were building their own rail bikes in their garages and taking them out.
Oh, so people were doing it, but not on a large. May I ask you what you do professionally? I mean, I know now it's this, but what was it before? Are you an engineer?
Oh, no, I have a degree in music education.
Oh, music education. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was a choral specialist, but that was in another lifetime.
Wow, this is quite a shift.
I worked for Washington State Department of Labor and Industries for years doing data.
So you've had 3 different lifetimes.
Oh, no, I've had more than 3.
Wow, that's quite a shift. What made you personally
interested?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Kenya, and when I got back from Kenya, I started doing some research here, actually out at Evergreen, looking at appropriate technology for bicycle power, and I found this book that had a picture of a rail bike in it, and I said, geez, that's really cool, but what would you ever do with it?
So it was in a book that you
it was in a book.
Happenstance.
Yep, a book called Pedal Power.
Pedal Power.
By Rohde Press.
Okay.
So I looked at it, and then my wife and I went down to Costa Rica in '91, I think, and we looked at, well, we were helping raise some money for a rainforest park down there that only existed on paper.
Oh.
And so I went with a bunch of government people down to the south around Golfito, and after 8 hours of pounding down the Pan American Highway, we got out and I walked down to the river or down to the coast, and I saw these rusty railroad tracks that obviously weren't being used, and I looked up the tracks and I looked down the tracks and I could see the rail bike tours in my head.
Oh.
So I talked to the government people and they said, well, yeah, nobody's been using these for years, and looked at a map and they ran for 75 miles across, through nothing but wetlands and rainforest. And it's like, okay, well, it looks like maybe there might be something here. But then I spent the next, I think, 6 or 8 years looking or negotiating with the railroad company down there. And every time I went down, they had a new president, and it was...
So did they ever get the money for the rainforest park?
Not for that particular one, I don't think.
Okay.
But...
still was a great idea.
Oh, it was fun.
Where have you rail biked then?
I have rail biked in Portugal, and I have rail biked in Mexico, and I've rail biked in Canada, and I've rail biked in Madagascar and Costa Rica.
So you just pack up your rail bike. They're not there waiting for you.
No, you ship them down.
You must. Do you have some kind of a horse trailer, or is it portable?
We have set them up for the rail bike tours in Costa Rica. We had a trailer that we could put about 8 rail bikes on.
Did you design the trailer or something?
We modified it to carry these particular things, because it's not like trying to move bikes. They're much stiffer. And
heavier.
They're heavier. But,
what do they weigh usually about?
At that time, the ones I was using down in Costa Rica weighed about 95 pounds.
Oh, so something
which sounds really heavy, but you put a bicyclist on it and
it moves fast.
And they ride up and down and they say, well, how much does this weigh? And I say, well, pick it up.
Yeah.
and they're usually really shocked at how much
so
it
heavy.
weighs. But
it moves. Yeah,
but there's very little rolling resistance.
You told me on the phone about, if you could make a quick story of it, about the blind person.
Yeah, I got a call when I was doing tours out at Mount Rainier, and it ended up being on NPR. And I got this phone call from this woman who said, well, I heard this story and I want to set up an appointment for my daughter and I. And I said, well, great, when do you want to go? And she said, well, I wanted to make sure it was okay, but finally she just blurted out, well, she's blind. And I thought about it for about 3 seconds and I said, well, that's not a problem, you'll just have to do that. So we went out and we rode, and the daughter was so excited. And when we were heading back into Mineral, she was behind me on a bike, and I had told her that she had to keep a certain amount of distance between it. And when I would turn around and look at her, she had her hands off the handlebars like she was running down the mountain, and it didn't occur to me till that point that blind people never get to move themselves at speed anywhere. So she was
That's amazing.
Pretty excited about
So they
the whole
move
thing.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the safety precautions? Do you wear helmets? Or anything?
Yeah, you wear helmets and you make sure that your equipment is adjusted correctly. But most of the danger in rail biking in general is not running into a tree or not running into a train. It's getting hit by a car at a road crossing because they're not expecting to see anything there. And so that's the real.
And plus the lights don't come on, and the gates don't come down.
It's there. Nobody's expecting to see you out there. You may even have the right of way. But you're not. You can't dump the bike. You can't do anything except get hit.
So are there many casualties on this?
I've never actually come up with a casualty, even all the way back into the 1880s.
Okay. Wow. So I'm hearing our floor director. He's trying to get us to wrap it up. I'm wondering if you can bring some pictures up so we can have some more visuals, so that our home viewers, even if we just stay on this one, because I want our viewers to understand what we're talking about. And basically, they are bikes to be ridden on rails, on train tracks. So is this a family activity, would you say?
I did some stuff down in Astoria at my first operation, and we had, kid seats, and it was very popular.
Well, like you said, a blind person could even do it. How wonderful is that?
We also had autistic kids that did it, and parents would come up and say, I've never seen them respond to anything.
So is this therapeutic, do you think, for autistic children?
I think so, yeah. It's like anything. It's like horses or something that's a little bit different. And you put people in control of something, but you can't get lost. You can't fall off the rails.
Sounds like something I could be interested in. So, I want to thank you for coming. You are from, I found out about you actually not all that long ago. We met over the phone. And I want to thank you for returning my phone call.
Oh, thank you for calling.
This is quite interesting, very unique. And to think that you're one of the few people in the United States, possibly the world, that even makes
There are a few, but not too many.
When you started, there weren't.
Well, and I was about the only person doing anything commercially at that time. So.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I want to thank the crew that showed up tonight. A lot of people came through some bad weather, and somebody had to come through a terrible traffic accident out there that they went by. And we appreciate the crew that showed up. Thank you to our home viewers. Tune in again. We're on every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday too. And thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you for having me.
Maybe I'll go ride with you sometime. Okay, bye.
To life and liberty, we're all created equally in America. seas to build the new world colony.